so glad that you all are here. Give yourselves a round of applause. So at 6:06, I welcome you to a live edition of Political Breakfast here at the Brookhaven Community Center. What a lovely, lovely venue this is. And it is packed. It is packed with some notable faces in the room. We talked about our CEO, Jennifer Dorian. Thank you so much for being here. Our fearless leader of our newsroom, Alex Helmick, he's in the back there. Raise your hand. So many wonderful workers from our WABE news team. And then Brookhaven, is the entire city hall here from Brookhaven? We have the mayor here. Please stand. Mayor John Park. And city council members, please all stand who are in the room tonight. If that's not a sign that politics, I see Tharon's lovely wife here. There she is, and I see Brian's lovely wife and daughter here. Man, this room is packed with superstars. That is an indication of just how important this political climate is right now. I am so pleased that I had the opportunity to walk around the room and ask you, what do you want to hear about tonight? What do you want to hear about tonight? What do you want to hear about tonight? And the majority of you said what? The governor's race, which is hot, 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 and getting hotter. So before we begin this hot topic, I'd like to introduce my co-hosts here, Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson, to bring you greetings.
Thank you for coming to my hometown. When they were looking for a venue, I was like, I know the city council has really been pushing City Hall as a place to bring people together. And one person I want to introduce as well was our former mayor, John Ernst here, who, look, when you take on an endeavor like building a new city building, there are a lot of bullets that come with it, and you get bullets until it is standing, and then everybody loves you and loves it. So thank you for your leadership in making this happen. It's a beautiful facility. And as a Brookhaven taxpayer, I was very proud to push this location. So it's really a great venue, easy to get to, even at 5:30, sort of easy to be at 5:30.
Well, hold on, B-Rob. Now, Kevin, you guys remind me, I think how the city center came up was, yes, you did say that you're a resident, but Lisa know where I'm going.
Here we go.
I was the one who said that you guys got to take it to Brookhaven because they're my client. They're my favorite client. And I want to give a special shout out again to Mayor Park, to Madeline Simmons, who's a council member, Mayor Pro Tem, John Funny, and also former Mayor Ernst as well, but also Christian Sigmund, who I think is not here, who's the city manager. When Kevin emailed him, Mayor, he responded right away. So me and B-Rob had a lot to do with this jointly for being in Brookhaven. But I agree with B-Rob. This is an amazing facility. You guys went through so much to get it built. I think that as I had drinks with Madeline the other day, you know, it's the city center. We wanted to be a place where people can come. And I like the parking situation. And shout out to Marta, being close to Marta. And you guys just had an amazing Cherry Blossom Festival. So mayor, council members, it was amazing. So good job.
All right, so lots of kudos out there. Now, normally, if you guys listen to us, you know we talk a lot of sports at the beginning of our newscast. We're not going to do that now. We're just going to say go Hawks, right?
No, we got to talk about McCollum,
We're just going to say go Hawks, yeah.
I mean, shout out to the Hawks really quickly. I mean, last night, who watched last night's game? Anyone? What did it for me, Lisa, and I'll be real quick, give me 30 seconds, is you're watching the game.
They always put a political spin on it, too, by the way.
And as you're watching the game, you're just thinking like, okay, here we go. Brunson is just going to take over like you always do. KAT, they're going to do the little screen and roll. But the defense and these young players, no one is trying to take the spotlight and got the defensive stops. But C.J. McCollum, who, by the way, they were using the F-bomb against him in the arena, hit up some big shots. And so I think as they come back home, Lisa, I'm making a bold prediction here on political breakfast that I think the Hawks is going to win this series in 6 games.
You heard it. You heard it right here at the Brookhaven Community Center.
B-Rob, it's going to go 6. It's going to go 6, not 7. It'll go 6.
Yeah.
Hawks in 6.
Brian, you're mainly football, right, and golf, right?
Yes, mainly Georgia football, and that's my main thing. And I'm a Falcons fan, Hawks fan, Braves fan, all that. The dogs, what really matters. And look, when I see the Hawks, I think it'd be so great for the city. I think it's, not that we've got a legacy of championships around here by any means, but it's been since 2021, since the Braves won. So it'd be great to, Not that they're going to win the championship. It would just be nice to see them make a run.
Okay.
And look, Mayor Mamdani has made a point about this. I would love to beat him in anything. So.
There you go.
Anything.
Ooh, well, let's talk about beating someone. The hot topic again is the governor's race, and some new polling has come out and some new attack ads. And one that we were chattering about was Rick Jackson. And yes, you got to do your disclaimer there. Rick Jackson attacking Keisha Lance Bottoms, and you all predicted this was going to happen months ago, and it's starting to heat up. And a lot of folks out here and everywhere think it's kind of detrimental. To the game of politics, especially where Georgia is now, in terms of the bread and butter issues that we really need to focus on.
Look, the negative ads are a big part of any primary. Look, when you are going in, you're all seeing the same amount, the same polling, right? So you know what the number one issue for your voters are. You know what number 2, number 3, and number 4 are. And for the most part, if you've been in office, you're going to have a voting record, and it's going to be very similar to the other people who are in the race. And so what divides you isn't policy so much, it is more personal things. And so you have to go at each other. We're not inventing that in Georgia in the gubernatorial primary in 2026. This is how it's always been. I'm a veteran of the 2010 governor's race, and buddy, that was as bitter and as nasty as anything that you're seeing right now. There was just not $100 million behind it because nobody had that kind of money. That's part of what's different here and really kind of drowning out the Democrats in this race. They've got a very important race going over on their side too. Mm-hmm. But they don't have the money to put behind the negative message. They would love to rip each other's throats out if they could. No one would see it, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to know what the Democrats are saying, you kind of got to go to a forum and listen to them. That's not true with the Republicans who are in your face every day. They're in your digital. Like you're talking about getting emails from Republican campaigns. So the Republicans just have the ability right now in this really unique circumstance where you've got one guy who's a billionaire, one guy who's part of a billionaire family, pouring what probably to this point is $100 million into the primary. We've never seen that before. And that's what's different. The negativity has always been there. It's always going to be there. But now it's just in your face. All the real estate's bought up.
Yeah, but there's a lot to say about showing up. I did a forum last night for Secretary of State, some other races. All Democrats were there, and all the Republicans who were invited did not show up. So, Tharon, I'll begin with you. There's something to be said about showing up, no matter what, right?
Well, Lisa, I'm going to go back to your original question, which is the response from the Rick Jackson ad attacking former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. But I absolutely agree with you, and B-Rob heard me say this earlier. If you talk to any Democratic candidate for governor right now, he or she, they would tell you they're doing 2 to 3 forums a week, even on the weekends. And so what you're seeing on the Democratic side is B-Rob is right. You also have this billionaire family, and you also have Brad Raffensperger, who is worth upwards to $90 million, and even Chris Carr is a $5 million guy. So all of these folks are going to put their money in. Unfortunately, on the Democratic side, these folks are being invited to communities. Right now, as we sit here, there's a debate going on right now, where it's an actual forum in DeKalb County, and you have all these candidates who are attending. I think that on the Democratic side, you do see that Keisha Lance Bottoms, who, by the way, is in first place in most, if not all, of the polls, she is participating in the majority of the debates. But for a guy like Olu Brown and Derek Jackson, they don't have opportunities to have enough money to even get their message out. So you have Duncan, you have Thurman, and you have Estevez, and they're all showing up. And not only are they actually just showing up, Lisa, they're staying around, they're talking to voters, and they're leading into it. So you're not seeing that on the Republican side. And I think that's going to hurt the Republicans come November because, yes, you're getting all the negativity and the television ads. I talked to a very high-ranking person in the Republican Party today in one of the campaigns for governor, and they're saying, hey, we want to go positive, but every time we turn around, one of the campaigns are sort of putting out an attack ad on us, or it's a third party sort of promoting something, and you have to respond. But I think that there is going to be some paid advertisement. I know that Jason Estevez is back up on digital with an ad. I'm sure Duncan is going to be coming forward with a big buy. I know Thurman is going to do a radio buy. He's going to do television. And you'll also see Keisha Lance Bottoms will, after she's done promoting her book, which she released this week, you're going to see her come out with a big digital and sort of TV buy. But you're right, Lisa, it's a tale of two cities. Democrats want to debate. Democrats want to do this. We want to hear from the people. We want to engage with you. We want your response. On the Republican side, I do think B-Rob is getting paid to protect his candidate, and you want to make sure that when you have reform or debate, no, he is. He's one of the best in the business. You don't want to put your candidate out there to give his or her opponents, an opportunity to attack. So I'm looking forward to the Republican debate. I think it's going to be fireworks between Burt Jones and Rick Jackson. I think Carr's got to make a move. I think Raph, as we like to call him on the Republican side, we need to see some toughness and meanness from him. We know he has it. You don't become Secretary of State if you don't know how to tell people no. We remember he told Donald Trump no. And then you have Clark Dean. I think there's another gentleman who's running too. So Lisa, big difference. But real quick, I'll respond to the ad, and I know Brian will respond. I just can't from the life of me really think and understand, why is Rick Jackson spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, on Keisha Lance Bottoms, someone who he's not running against right now? And before
because he can.
So he's got so much money that he's like, all right, I'm going to attack all the Republicans, zero in on Burt Jones, and by the way, if I got $1 million left over, I'm just going to go put it on Keisha Lance Bottoms. But he also has sent out 2 mail pieces before this. And what he's doing, Lisa, is I think that what I get to is, yes, he has the money to do it, but he's also trying to draw a contrast between him and Keisha as being this outsider. And I think he's got to believe that it's going to help him with some Republican primary voters to say, hey, we don't want Atlanta or the metro area to represent the state. Now, Keisha has not backed down. I mean, she's clapped back a couple times. She's saying that she's going to continue to run, but this last ad, I just watched it before we even walked in here. I mean, first of all, Rick Jackson, B-Rob, y'all got him looking younger and younger every time I see him. I mean, it's amazing with some. He's looking good. No, yeah. I'm looking credit.
He's going to visit China, your dermatologist wife.
But
yes,
but the cars burning. Him reminding us and there's another ad is out there. We don't know who did it. It's a very, I think it's Keisha, the number 4 governor, shows cars burning, police attacks. I mean, it's a pretty hard-hitting ad, and I think, Lisa, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and Brian, your position is the majority of Republicans don't have to show up because they don't have to right now because they're spending money on these big ads, right?
Look, the whole showing up thing, look, I was coming in here on 2 wheels because I just left the Georgia Association of Manufacturers Forum, where every candidate, Republican and Democrat, except for Keisha, came. So Rick Jackson, Burt Jones, Chris Carr, Raph, they were all there, all the Dems but Keisha. So we're all doing it to some degree. But we're talking about a primary where we may have 1.5 million voters show up. You can't go to forums and reach 1.5 million voters. That is not how you're going to reach the average Georgian. And look, let me tell you, where we live is very different. You go into rural Georgia, that part still wants you to show up, be in their community. They want to touch you. They want to be around you in a room. Metro Atlanta voters do not care about meeting you, right? They expect to meet you through the TV or through the mailbox or through digital. They do not expect. There's no one here who'd be like, Jeff Duncan was at Fox Brothers in Brookhaven. Nobody cares, right? But you would care if that was in Dublin or Cochrane or wherever in Georgia. There's a bit of a difference there. And let me talk about, and again, I always have to disclose, Rick Jackson is my client. What attacking Keisha Lance Bottoms does in a primary is, one, it gives Republican voters a break from attacks on Republicans. I think everybody's just like, hey, enough, I got it, uncle. But Keisha Lance Bottoms is a unifying factor for Republicans. They universally think she did a bad job as mayor of Atlanta. I'm not saying that, but that's what the perception of Republican voters would be. They remember what happened in 2020 and 2021. They have a very negative view of it. By the way, a lot of Democrats do too. When they put out that mail piece about Keisha, I heard more from Democrats than I did from Republicans about that mail piece, including Tharon. Tharon was talking to me about it and talking about how in the black community, particularly in Atlanta, that mail piece kind of got pushed around. So it's an issue that breaks through. The Democrats aren't able to attack her right now because they're all bunched up for second. And if they are the one, somebody needs to go after Keisha for these other guys. They run the risk of her getting up to 50% and ending this thing on May 19th. It's not likely. It's mathematically a small chance, but it could happen. But nobody can go after Keisha because if you start attacking, your negatives go up too. So if Jason Estevez goes after her, it benefits Michael Thurman or Jeff Duncan, or if it's Jeff Duncan, it benefits the other two. So they've got a strategic choice to make. But for Rick Jackson, it's a free shot. Right? You know, it reminds Republicans, hey, he's one of us. He wears the jersey. He's against her.
Wow. Outside of the candidates, let's talk issues, the issues that affect all of us in this room. What are some of the issues outside of these candidates that need to be pushed forward ahead of the election?
So, Lisa, you know I have to respond real quickly to B-Rob because Keisha Lance Bottoms got a lot of sorority sisters out here. She went to FAM. I don't want her rattlers to say.
She inherited a lot.
That brother sat up there and he didn't say nothing in response to B-Rob's attack. So I have to just give me 15 seconds. No, listen. Keisha Lance Bottoms, I've known her since 2007, so almost 20 years. A lot of people don't know this. Her first race was a judge race that she lost. She came back in 2009, and she ran a very crowded field for city council in Southwest Atlanta to succeed the late Jim Maddox. So she served on council for 8 years. And, you know, I go back to her book because I think that she's using this book as a way to kind of tell people about her decision not to run again. Also, I was there in 2017. A lot of people doubted that she could win that race. A lot of people thought that she was just a sort of a crony to Kasim Reed and that she wasn't her own woman. And so she won that race. And I think that while Rick Jackson is making a sort of a contrast between the neighborhood he grew up in, which was Techwood Homes, is actually she let it burn. And then some of the people, you know, B-Rob like to always tell me what I tell him about the black community, and I tell him what he tells me about the white community, what they say.
I'm here for all your questions about black people. So for later, if you want to hold it, I'm an expert.
So what Rick Jackson is doing is say, hey, it's a part of his billionaire rags to riches story. I grew up in Techwood Homes. And, you know, a lot of folks who actually grew up in Techwood Homes, Lisa, I'm hearing from, they're like, yeah, but when Rick Jackson was there, I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't as bad as it was when, like, later on in the time. So I will say this about Keisha Lance Bottoms. She's number one in the polls. She's got money on hand. She's going to hit back. And she's the only woman in the race for governor. And so to B-Rob's point, whoever decides to continue to attack her, because Jason Estevez has said some things publicly about her. Jeff Duncan just recently said something about her in the leadership forum. They got into a debate about Buckhead City. So I don't want you all to sit here and think that like the candidates who are running are not saying anything, but Keisha will say things too. All right, so let's get to the issues. As I'm driving here to Brookhaven, Lisa, I thought about one thing, and I want you all to just pause and think what's going on in this country right now. We're at war with Iran. The economy right now is unstable. I think there's a lot of uncertainty. We just read today that people are not re-enrolling in what Republicans like to call the Obamacare, but ACA's subsidies have expired, so that means that rural hospitals are going to close. We don't have enough transit. That's why we're all stuck in traffic, because we have some surrounding counties who won't expand MARTA. We also have a president who now has gotten rid of his third cabinet secretary. And as B-Rob just mentioned, I talked to a few Democratic candidates. They went and talked to the Georgia Manufacturers Association. Shout out to Brittany Hull. She's a big fan of this podcast. But there's no way that any candidate can go in there and make those hardworking women and men in manufacturing feel like the economy is heading in the right direction. Manufacturing jobs are down. Unemployment is up. And we're also seeing a level, and I'm going to steal this from John Ossoff. John Ossoff said recently that it's basically a daily, if not weekly, Watergate moment that we're seeing from Republicans. I'm going to use Governor Kemp's words. You can't get, I won't say the word because I got in trouble recently on Georgia game, but you can't get S done in Washington because there's a lack of leadership. But let's also bring it back home. We're dealing with the issue of crime. We're seeing teens get murdered. We're seeing shootings happen all over the metro area right now. Shout out to our women and men in law enforcement. And as the council members reminded me that if you do something in Brookhaven, they're going to track you down real quick and get you. So Lisa, I paint that sort of realistic, dark picture because we all know that the cost of living is too high. Affordability is a concern. We know that not only are black women being laid off more than anybody. Lisa, I just read this week. You want to know who the largest demographic of people right now who cannot find a job? It's recent college graduates. So all these people, when you've been told your whole life, go to this 4-year institution, right? Go get your master's, go get your doctorate, go get your law degree, go to medical school, or go to a 2-year technical college. And you're coming out and you can't even find a job because it could be AI or it could be the economy, the uncertainty. And I would tell you this, is that I think that the person who emerges, he or she, that can say all of what I just said and try to give us some hope and to basically try to bring some change to this is going to be the leader that's going to get us out of all this. So, Lisa, I think, yes, affordability is up there. But when Brian and I got a chance to talk to Chief Shearbaum, and by the way, Brookhaven has an amazing chief of police as well, but they would tell you, we got too many guns on the streets. Now, I'm not against responsible gun ownership. If you're a responsible gun owner and you're a law-abiding citizen, that's great, and that's fine. And I want you to feel like you can protect yourself. But when we started allowing 13 and 14-year-olds to have possession of guns and they're shooting each other at parks, or we have a 3-year-old who was actually shot because the babysitter allowed this 3-year-old to get access to a gun, we got to talk about this issue around gun safety in this country. And so I just think that, Lisa, these are just some of the issues that people got to talk about. And I'll give credit to Mayor Dickens, who I was talking to the other day. I think that people want to be able to go to their parks and feel safe. They also want to go take their kids to playgrounds and feel safe. But when you have the Republican-led legislature who put out this bill, it started at the state, that you can literally have a gun at any time, anywhere, even in the airport. They just can't take it through security. You can have it in church. You can have it in, different places. I think we just got to really have a conversation about the issue with guns and it getting in the wrong hands of bad people who are using it to murder innocent lives.
All right, Brian, let's get you in this. Gun control, and we talked about that messaging in terms of affordability months ago. Is that still standing strong, and does that resonate with the GOP?
Well, the affordability issue is one that really propelled President Trump into office because we had historically high inflation leading up to 2024, and it's impossible to win re-election when inflation is 8-9%. That taste was still in voters, even though inflation was coming down in 2024, that taste was still in voters' mouth, and they felt anxiety. And if you're an incumbent and your voter feels like their personal economic circumstances aren't getting better, and if they feel like next year is not going to be better, then you're in a whole heap of trouble. And that's what happened to Joe Biden. The Dems were in control, they paid the price. Now Republicans are in control, and if voters feel that anxiety, they feel that burden in October of 2026, Republicans are going to pay the price for it. There's still time for some change, for people to feel like, in 2027, I'm going to be better off. Tharon mentioned public safety. We saw that spike in 2021 for obvious reasons. Part of what the attack on Keisha Lance Bottoms is about. And I told Atlanta Police Chief Shearbaum when he met with us on Friday, he was bragging about the stuff they've done, taking on gangs and lowering the crime rate, lowering the murder rate in Atlanta. And I said, don't do such a good job that you push them into Brookhaven.
He did say that. He actually did say that.
Yes. We don't want to hear you. Just let them stay there.
So many places I can go with that comment, though.
But affordability is the number one issue for voters today. And so what I want to see going into the general election, and look, in a primary is a different set of issues. You're not necessarily dealing with the kitchen table issues. Both sides are showing their voters that you wear the jersey, that you're a fighter, that you'll stand up for their values, that you will post up on the other side. Both sides want to see that because the people that vote in a primary are different than the people who vote in a general election. The general election is much bigger. The people who vote in a primary are much more partisan. They're much more ideological. And wearing the jersey is more important to them than the broader election in a general. So in the general, what I want to see in Georgia is, one, housing. It makes me angry as an American and as a Georgian that Gen Z can't buy a home. The average age in Georgia for first-time homeowners now is in the low 40s. That is outrageous. It is destroying the American dream. Americans and Georgians can't get their first foot on the economic wealth building ladder, and that's a disaster for our country. Healthcare. One thing, I'm not here to spin for Rick Jackson, but, one thing Rick Jackson talks about is, I know healthcare. I'm a healthcare executive, and we have a lot of inefficiencies in our system. And if I can't lower healthcare costs in my first term, if we're not the most healthcare efficient economy in the entire country, I won't run for re-election. I think he is speaking to one of the major issues. Tharon mentioned that what's happening with the exchange. Several 100,000 Georgians have now dropped off of their insurance, which was wholly predictable. Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Well, this is one of the reasons why she quit Congress. This is like one of those things that really made her angry, that so many working class Georgians, and let me tell you, the working class Georgians today are Republicans. There's no longer this labor-affiliated, blue-collar Democrat vote. Those people are Republicans in rural areas, and they're feeling the squeeze on that. And it's their kids who can't get health insurance. It's their families who are nervous about going to the hospital, nervous about being in an accident, because there's no way to pay the bills if it happens. And third, and I think a little less so, education costs. But if we can talk about housing and health care and offer a solution, I think that is going to break through. Because in the general election, it's the kitchen table issues that matter. And there are some things that are beyond the candidate's control, right? Republicans are in control, and they will own this economy for good or for ill. And it's the economy stupid, as James Carville said, and that's still true today. And look, Georgia is at a demographic tipping point when it comes to how it impacts the partisanship of the state. Trump had a bigger lead in that 2024 race in Georgia, partly because people were ready for change with Biden. But look, Democrats can win Georgia, right? Republicans have got to be smart about who they nominate. They better have a good message in the general. And they got to hope that Georgians who are unhappy with Washington and what's happening there are like, but I like Brian Kemp. I like the way Georgia's being run. I like the way that we do things here, and I don't want to see change. We're on the right track. Republicans have to be brilliant. And Tharon mentioned a lot of issues there, right? Because Democrats are the outside party, so they can be for Republicans. It's more about protecting what you've done. Democrats won't change. And so that gives them a lot of messaging opportunities, right? That gives them a lot of messaging opportunities in this year.
Yeah, so Tharon, take some of that and what he said and put it in order of importance in terms of the issue. Healthcare, gun control, what?
Well, one thing that B-Rob has been saying, if you guys listen to the podcast, and we like to make bold predictions on the podcast, and I don't want to misquote him, but I'm going to remind him what he said, and there is time, but B-Rob has reminded us constantly that if President Trump's approval rating is 40 or below, right? Y'all have heard the podcast. If he says it's 40 or below, Republicans are in trouble. Well, last time I checked, and I checked yesterday on 420, John Funny, and don't worry, I wasn't under the influence. Shout out to the belated 420 folks out there. That's an issue we're not talking about. I think we could explore the possibility of legalizing marijuana in Georgia, but I digress. The president's approval rating is 38%. So let me just bring that to y'all. 38% of the Americans only approve of our president. And the other 62% of Americans, when asked, do you approve of the job that the president of the United States is doing? So if he stays at 38%, Lisa, and I think he gets up to 40, 41, B-Rob knows this. We're going to see a sweeping change. Now, let's talk about a prioritization. And you were about to go there. I think education. When you think about education, and many of us have the means to be able to send our kids to schools that we want to send our kids to. Some of us have those means. And some of us decide to go to a private school. Some of us decide to go to a charter school. But I want you all to know that roughly about almost 90% of our children in the state of Georgia are going to public schools. And they don't have a decision to say, hey, I want to live in Brookhaven, or I want to live in Sandy Springs, or I want to live in Johns Creek, or I want to live in South Fulton. You have to go to the school that your mom or your dad or your parents can afford to live. And so the fact that we're not hearing more about public education, and this is where B-Rob goes down, and this is a good Republican talking point that they've been testing now for about 4 years, and he's been at the forefront of it. But then you get into this issue around choice. And I'm here to say, this is a very, Jennifer reminds us of this, we get along very well most times on and off the air. But I think that the issue around public education and fully funding it making sure our teachers are actually getting the pay they deserve, and more importantly, Lisa, making sure that they can actually be in a classroom where they feel safe.
Yeah.
The fact that we don't go further to make sure that we have a human resource officer in every single school in our state, including middle schools and high schools, to make sure we have metal detectors. These are things that Democrats can talk about, and I think most Republicans will agree. But the other thing that we haven't talked about just yet, and I don't think you'll mind me telling you this, I did get a little call from your opponent, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, and when he was done fussing at me about a little something, I asked him the question, and it was nice. He don't talk to me the way he sometimes talk to me, Rob, but it's okay.
It's not nice, what I guess. No. No.
But
You want to go into history? Why?
But
I'll show you the text. It's obscene.
Yeah. It was a post-session conversation for our clients, because I was making sure the Lieutenant Governor knew where one of my clients stood. But this issue around data centers is another one, and Brian has been
that's a big one.
Brian has been saying this, and I heard it from a Republican person who's in the state, just like Brian. It's an issue that really is favorable in some of the metro cities, and some cities unfavorable. But it's also favorable in some rural areas and unfavorable. In full disclosure, I represent a company, two, that actually have data centers. But I think that's one that I would add to the list. But if I had to rank them, Lisa, to answer your question directly, I definitely think affordability. I think healthcare is up there. We got to talk more about education, responsible gun ownership, and I also think that the economy. I mean, people. I can't tell you how many people are getting laid off right now, and they are taking jobs that they're underqualified for. And then think how that's a trickle down effect. So when you start having people who got doctorates and master's degrees, lawyers and doctors starting to take less jobs, then the people who are really like in public health or in private sector going to get all this, they can't even get those jobs because employers are saying, oh, I can get Brian Robinson and he's got 2 master's degrees and he's working on his doctorate, and I can get him for the same price I can get with somebody who only has a bachelor's. I mean, that's the type of stuff that I'm hearing from people, is that I'm applying, and then it's not even good enough anymore, Lisa, to say, hey, I know somebody, because a lot of times, I know Brian gets those calls too, hey, can you call such and such, and you do this, and they be like, yeah, well, we're going to probably promote internally. And then a lot of these companies are downsizing, and so when they start downsizing, then they start promoting people internally, so I don't need 5 people in that department. I can just get it done with 1 person. And then AI can help me do the rest.
Yeah, it's certainly tough times.
AI can help you do the rest if we build data centers, right? That's the thing. All the people organizing against data centers are doing it online, all of which is going through a data center.
With high tech,
right?
yeah.
And let me tell you, I travel with Rick Jackson, so I'm with like Republican voters several days a week in forums, town halls. Data centers are the one issue that come up in every town hall and every forum, and people are very passionate about it.
Not in my backyard, kind of thing.
Yeah, and look, what's got to happen is that these data centers have got to come together in a coalition and educate Georgians on what's going to happen, and we have to make a deal with Georgia voters. We got to say, we're going to put this here. I know it's not pretty. We're going to put some trees around it. It's not going to make any noise. I know you've been told it makes noise. It does not, right? And you're not going to pay higher energy prices because PSC has said they have to pay up front. So these data centers are having to pay big amounts to stabilize our energy prices. And we've got to have that conversation with Georgians. They got to know they're getting something out of this deal. And frankly, what is the number one issue that you get, Mayor Park? Property taxes, right? And they're mainly mad at the cab, not you, but you're the one they know, right? And that's what happens.
Stop answering your phone, okay?
Yes. We had a hole in our road, as Mayor Park knows. He used to be my city council member. We had a hole in the road for more than a year. And DeKalb put orange barrels around it in the middle of our residential street for a year. And it's a DeKalb County issue. It was the gas issue. And my neighbors were saying, we're not voting for that John Park guy for mayor because we got these orange cones out here on the street for a year, right? Wasn't even his fault, right? We have to have a conversation about what people are going to get. And property taxes is where we make that deal. We say, okay, there's going to be a data center in this county. We're going to eliminate property taxes for people with a homestead, or maybe just all residential property altogether. You've got to make that deal. Tell voters there's something in it for them, or they're going to be against it.
All right. We want to hear from you now. Lily, we've got some questions from our audience.
Testing. The first one is Bill Dynan, right here. Okay. And please keep it to about a minute so we can try to get as many as we can. Thank you.
You can tell she's a producer, right?
It's amazing. So the state doesn't seem to be able to agree on how to hold the election in the fall.
Yeah.
I'm not one to really doubt the election machinery. I always thought that was just a made-up issue, but the more I hear about it, the more I worry a little bit. So is this going to get solved with the QR codes and the machines and all this?
B-Rob, know this one gets me fired up. And you're sitting next to my fellow Clark Atlanta Board of Trustee member there, so shout out to Clark Atlanta. I said I don't know if you guys watched us on TV on Georgia Gang, and when we got to this subject, I said that it was a hot, I'm not going to do it, Jennifer, mess. I want to say the other word. Because think about it. A little less than 2 years ago, the bill went through the legislature, and it says, hey, Secretary of State, everyone, Georgia legislature, figure it out. You got to get rid of the QR code. So we've known for almost 2 years that going into the 2026 elections and 27 and beyond, we had to figure out a way to give a solution to the QR code. So now we go and we start the legislative session, and the Secretary of State, give him a little credit, he tried to offer solutions, but it was very difficult for him to break through. We know that what we get from our Georgia Elections Board, that's just chaotic. So we go through 40 legislative days, and then the very last day, and B-Rob reminded me of this, we were this close to trying to find a solution. So now, as we sit here as Georgia voters, there is so much uncertainty about the security and, more importantly, the integrity and the belief that we're going to have a safe and secure election, that we can expect that the outcomes that we're going to be given on May 19th or in the runoff or in November are accurate. So we're setting ourselves up to be on the national stage again. We just went through this with Donald Trump asking to go find votes, and Raffensperger said no, and he was smart enough to record them. We just went through an FBI raid in Fulton County where they've taken the ballots. People don't even talk about that anymore. And we went through the session, Lisa, didn't get a solution. So now it falls on the governor. And I saw the governor this weekend in Savannah, and I wasn't going to dare bring up this subject. Now, I brought up a lot of other subjects with him, but he is in a very tough position because he's got to probably bring the legislators back to a special session. And the question is, we're now April 21st as we're taping this podcast. The election's on May 19th. Nobody wants to leave their district right now when they're trying to campaign to get reelected or elected. And so when they come back, it's just a mess. And so I think that it's an issue that I'm very concerned about, and I'm really concerned that B-Rob just said it. Democrats can win this state. He didn't say they will. He said they can. I want to quote him correctly. But I'm afraid that if we were to win, we're going to see what happened on January 6th, just on a Georgia level, with people claiming that the election was stolen. And so this is something I think we got to get together pretty quickly.
Yeah. The deal, we got to do something, because if we do nothing and we use the current system that we have, which is the one that election workers are trained on, then our election result is illegal, because the QR code becomes illegal on July the 1st. So they got to change the law in some way or implement a new system that doesn't have the QR code. I'm pretty practical about the QR code. When you print out your ballot, it's not just a QR code. The names of the people you voted for are on there. If you voted in a referendum, the number you voted for is on there. It is on you as a voter to make sure that it's correct. And if it is correct, then we do have paper ballots, right? We all put it in the scanner. So this is a bunch of hubbub about nothing, in my opinion, but we are in a mess. We do have to get it fixed and get it done soon. And speaking of Governor Kemp, he is a former Secretary of State. He is someone who has very strong opinions on this. He is somebody who can speak over the din of this. He needs to come up with a solution, lead the horses to water, and tell them to drink. He's got 6 months left, and then he's done, right? This is a chance for him to just implement good governance. Georgians trust him. Even Democrats largely trust him. Independents largely trust him. He's the guy who can get it done, come up with a solution. Here's one of the practical things. The House doesn't want to come back in as long as Burt Jones, who's head of the Senate, is still in a campaign. They don't want to deal with the politics and feel like him having to deal with politics will make it difficult to do a deal. That's actually a very practical approach. The problem is that after the runoff, which is in mid-June, we're in the middle of the World Cup, which is a mile away from the Capitol. And so all of Atlanta is going to be in chaos. So we've got several walls that we're hitting as we're trying to get this fixed. Maybe it gets pushed into July, and they can come back and, move the law. It'll be in law July 1st. They can come in after that and change it.
But B-Rob, you had a good suggestion too, because I've heard you say it over and over now. Maybe just postpone the date, like
A year. July 1st, 2027, and this whole thing goes away. Yeah, that's all they got to do is come in and do that. Some people are going to, I think that's truly what Brian Kemp wants.
Okay.
And that's what Speaker Burns tried to do, and then it died in the Senate, all inside it died.
Lily.
All right, our next is Sherelle Garrell.
Thank you all for having us here today. My question is, where do the two of you most disagree about where Georgia politics is headed?
What do we agree about where it's headed, or where we previously
Disagree about.
Disagree about.
You agree on a lot of things, though.
Yeah, I think I got a couple of things in
it's
my
80%
pocket. I can
peaceful.
I can get B-Rob going. Let's see. So let me tell you the words I use. Watch this. If I use these two words, he's already. If I use these two words, voter suppression, he goes crazy.
It's as real as Snow White, right?
I think our most challenging
Election
time
stolen.
was the, and it was tough for us, and Lisa knows, but when the murder of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and when there was just a string of white police officers killing unarmed black men, that was just, it wasn't a bad, it was just a tough conversation for Brian and I to have. I think we disagree on. I think we sort of disagree. Oh, I'll tell you one most relevant. We kind of agree, but we disagree on this House Bill 369, which I did talk to the governor about, which is a bill that is so blatantly divisive and deliberate that they're targeting 5 counties to make their counties nonpartisan races and that. So he kind of agrees, but he disagrees that because he claims that he's a disenfranchised DeKalb voter.
My vote is suppressed.
Wait,
Yeah.
what did the governor
I'm a
say?
suppressed voter.
I want to know what the governor said.
Because all of my, except for at City Hall, all my votes are decided in the Democratic primary. I don't vote in the Democratic primary, so I'm disenfranchised.
What did the governor say?
I mean, that's a conversation between me and BK. No, I would tell you this. The governor, he doesn't mind me saying this. One thing I would say about Governor Kemp, he will listen to you and he will just look at you. And he will even recite to you what you said, but you're not going to, and Karina knows this, you're not going to get a yeah or nay. But
He's a consummate politician,
he'll listen
he
to
is.
you and he'll say, yeah, now what's that bill number
Yeah.
again? Or what do you, okay. And then, did you follow up my office? But no, he listened to me. But I think that there's some of the things that I think we disagree with going forward. What do you think, Brian?
I don't know that we actually see eye to eye when it comes to like the reality of Georgia politics and how competitive it is, and partisan trend lines. We're both professionals in politics, so it's not ideological. It's just like looking at numbers. It's a bit of science. So we agree on that largely. Yeah. But Tharon's right. I think where we've had through these 10 years, and we have been through a lot over 10 years. We have some emotional times in our society. Often when there is Tharon and I talk about politics in the city of Atlanta or in Metro Atlanta. There's no way you talk about politics in Metro Atlanta without talking about race. There's no way. They are part and parcel. They go together, and it matters. Race matters in Georgia politics. It doesn't matter what color you are, it matters. It does impact voter trends, demographic change impacts voter trends, all of that stuff. So, sometimes there is a cultural difference in perspective. We had a talk last week on the show, if you heard it. He's talking about gun violence, and we have a gun problem. I say we have a gang problem, right? At the end of the day, the victims are dead either way, but we see the issue and the problem as different. Yeah. I don't see, Republican view on guns is you don't see people who are legal gun owners, for the most part, engaging in street crime. Now, some of the legal gun owners do the mass shootings. That does happen. I'm not blind to that. But, some of our differences are the fact that we are culturally from different perspectives at times.
Yeah. Guns versus gang. That's what got us into trouble a couple weeks ago.
Let me just say this.
We stopped taping. And they were still talking 20 minutes later about this.
But I
gotta go.
No, but here's the thing. I want to say as a Democrat, I don't support gang violence, right? And Brian knows that, right? Like I think gang violence is terrible. But we had to.
And I'm
cut the
against
clock.
mass shootings.
There we go.
If I need to go out,
There we go.
I need to say that.
So we agree. All right, next question.
Lily.
Welcome back, Krista. How many political breakfasts live have you been to? I think I've seen you at least twice.
Yeah, I think this may be 5 or 6.
All
Okay.
right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back.
Oh, thank you for your
See,
support.
Brian, I remember
Yes.
that's my demographic. I'm working on her, man. We're expanding the party.
And y'all landed exactly where I wanted to talk about. I just recently heard this podcast you guys did on gun violence. And it's a not so thinly veiled perspective on race, right? Because when it seems like what I hear anyway, when Republicans talk about gang violence, it's inherently black. It's apparently a black issue. And when when gang violence comes from a white supremacy groups like the January 6th, what happened then, it's just people rising up, their rights. It's completely different. Like it's the mindset of it. But statistically, there's more whites perpetuating and victims of gun violence. And so my question is to the Democrats, how do they flip this script? How do they change this focus? Because this is not a city problem. This is not a all on black people problem. This is a political messaging problem. And we have to focus differently in order to, because the Republicans are going to come at Keisha Bottoms, they're going to come at the Democrats for this issue, and we have to push back.
Well, I'll quickly try to do a job of answering your question and also pushing back on it. So number one, you got to start here. You got to say, as a Democrat, I believe in the Second Amendment. All right, so that helps you with about a third or maybe half of the Republicans. Okay, he is not a crazy Democrat who trying to take our guns away. Then I think the next thing you got to say is that I also, while I believe in the Second Amendment, I do believe in responsible gun ownership. What does that look like? That means that when I have a gun in my house, I need to make sure that my gun is locked up, right? And I'm only using my gun to protect me and my family. And even if I use it in the car, I just want to have access to it. But I'm not using it to go out here and actually shoot people in parks and result to gang violence. The third thing, now this is where you get to the issue around gang violence, right? And this is where Brian and I kind of differ, because on one hand, you have the Attorney General, Chris Carr, who said repeatedly that there's literally gang violence in 158 counties out of 159 counties in the state of Georgia.
And the other one's lying, he says.
And he says the other one is lying. So, Chris, to answer your question, what does that mean? That means that there's not just gang violence in black majority counties. All right? So I'm just giving you facts. The Attorney General, who I believe wakes up every morning, gets statistics. So the problem is that when the gang violence, because it's in 158 counties out of 159 counties in Georgia, happens in Atlanta Metro, it's amplified because it's the people who are committing the violence, and it's the people who are the direct recipient of the violence. But I believe that what we don't see in Brookhaven, Atlanta, Sandy Springs, Clarkston, all these places that we live in, is that there's gang violence down in Savannah. There's gang violence in Augusta and all these other places. So the next thing we have to do, so once we educate people that it's happening everywhere in Georgia, not just in the black communities, right? And it's not just happening, what we see on TV, then you got to go into this issue where I think that it's the root cause of the issue. And the root cause of any gang violent issue, whether you're white, black, Hispanic, or Asian, because remember, the Attorney General said it's in 158 counties. It's direct result of lack of education, lack of access to resources, money, jobs. A lot of these folks are poverty. A lot of them are being raised by young parents, and they also are being bullied at school. And so we're not to make the teachers in school feel bad, but then some of them are actually incarcerated for a brief time. Also from our Attorney General and our Department of Corrections Commissioner, You have more gang activities in our jails and our prisons around the state than any other places. So I think if you attack it from that approach and say, how do we solve the gang problem, is that we gotta catch them at a very young age. Don't let them drop out of school. Don't let them stop working, and don't let these horrific gang members recruit them into these gangs. And so I think that's the thing that we got to do. Now let's get to real quick to the other thing that Republicans do. I got to figure out a better way to say this, and I'm trying to say it in a way where I don't come off to be racist, I guess. But the truth of the matter is, the gang violence locally gets the same amount of attention that we see with the mass shootings. And even though we can argue about the quantity of them, but the demographic of the person who is committing the most mass shootings in this state, in this country, we know the demographics of that person, right? And so I think that what Democrats got to say is what I'm about to say. All violence is bad, whether it's gang violence, whether it's mass shootings. But we got to deal with the issue of guns. We got to deal with the issue of mental illness, people who have access to guns who are mentally ill. And I think we got to deal with the root cause of the issue, which a lot of people don't like to talk about, what leads to the violence.
I think gang violence is one of the number one things that affects you and your community and your quality of life. And I don't care what color you are. I do not want those children being forced into that life. And I do think a lot of it is they are forced into it. But they are turned into very dangerous communities, into very dangerous criminals. And that it is a top issue in Metro Atlanta. And that is what drives much of the street crime. It's what drives much of the organized retail crime that is devastating to not only Target, but to mom and pop shops who are trying to operate. And it is something that the government's got to focus on. I don't care what the race is. And while we do talk about race and politics all the time, I try to de-racialize this conversation as much as possible because it's not helpful, right? There's the ghost face gangsters who are a white gang in Georgia prison, very dangerous people. You have the Latino community, the Asian community. Everybody has their own set of gang problems. So it's not a racial issue to me. It is a public safety issue, and it is something that is top of mind to voters.
Real quick, one more group I left out. I know we have lawyers in the room. We got to hold our judges more accountable, too. A lot of these gang members that we see are people who are in that reoccurring door. They get locked up, they're out in a month, they're out in 3 months, right? And so we got to make sure that we support our district attorney's offices to give them the resources they need. The district attorney, he or she needs to get along with the judge. Let's make sure that if it's a revolving door, this person, young man and woman, continues to get locked up for the same crimes over and over and over again. How do you expect them to do anything else but join the gang? And so I think we got to really put a little bit more pressure on our judicial system to do their part as well.
And I think one thing we're going to see in the general election, both sides talking about, is that our county jails have become de facto mental health hospitals, and deputies are not trained mental health professionals, and it's a problem. We're not helping. We're making the mental illness worse. Our jails are becoming a place to take mentally ill people and make them better criminals. It's bad for all of us, for the inmates and us.
Lily. This will be our last question tonight.
And you've been to a couple.
So make it a good one.
Good to
Make
see
it
you
a good
again.
one,
I usually
Maria.
tag along with her, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, actually, and trying to be as succinct as I can. One of them, you said something about education, right? And, we know that certain cities have better schools than others, right? And that, for me, I'm going to put it just bluntly, is kind of like a redlining that is occurring. If a family cannot afford to live, like, let's say, in Decatur, has excellent schools, they cannot, because they don't make enough money, they're not educated themselves, they cannot move into that neighborhood in order to have their children have that education. So one of the questions is, how can you get past that? How can you really, fix that? And the other question is, going back to the voting, and I went like this when you said it, he asked the question, then you responded, and I was like, yep. Is it all over again that we're going to have this January 6th, craziness happening again every time that we have dissent over who wins an election? Is it going to be all over again, and we're going to have mass riots?
Well, I'll answer your questions in the reverse order. No, I think one thing I know is that I think Georgia voters and we as Georgia citizens, we're not going to let what happened in Washington, D.C. on January 6th happen here. And I truly believe that as a Georgian. I've lived in Georgia my entire life. But I think that, to Brian's point, knowing the governor's sort of heart, knowing he wants to have a legacy, and you got all these political interests in play, I think you'll see the Republicans and the Democrats come together to come up with a solution with the voting. Now, let's get to your next question about the school systems. I want to point something out, too, that's happening not just in DeKalb County, but it's happening all over the state of Georgia. These superintendents are having to do what's happening right here in DeKalb. You're having to consolidate schools, right? We're all going through it. And I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Sauce, who is now the superintendent in the interim role in DeKalb County. I think his level of transparency, his level of access to say, hey, look, I'm trying not to use that other C word because he told me not to use it, but we want to consolidate the schools because it's a combination of a few things. One, we're just not reproducing at the level that we once were as Americans, right? So you don't have as many kids who are living in these particular cities. Two, a lot of parents are sending their kids to private schools. And they're doing, public charter school, which is a connection. But I think the third thing is that you look at some of these metro counties, a lot of folks are moving out to the burbs because they want to get as far away as they possibly can for whatever they think is going on in metro. So you're having these superintendents who are like, okay, I can't keep these schools open and keep them operable when no kids are there. I think that in DeKalb County, you've seen 20, 30%, and it's not just happening in DeKalb, I'm not picking on DeKalb, it's going all across the state. So I think we got to have a realistic conversation about how do we consolidate the schools, but how do we make public schools more attractive? And I think one of the ways we do it is making sure they're fully funded. Let's fully fund the QBE. Let's make sure that we recruit better teachers, and let's make sure that we continue to increase the graduation rates. And let's deal with this issue, and I got to give Speaker Burns credit on this, let's deal with this issue around literacy. Our literacy rates are very, very low. And if you look at states like Mississippi, and anybody here from Mississippi? I'm sorry if anybody is, but Mississippi, just a few years ago was way behind. Now they've passed Georgia in certain curriculum sort of sectors. So I think we got to know that not everybody wants their kids to go to public schools, but we got to make sure we consolidate and communicate with the parents. But also we got to make sure that we understand that we got to make sure that the public schools are safe and that we got good teachers and that we are very honest about the level of learning that's going on in them.
Let me tell you, I'll be a little bit partisan on this because here's the deal with failing schools. Those parents deserve choices. They deserve to have the chance to put their kid somewhere else. And we passed a very modest parent choice bill here 2 years ago. It's not near what some of our neighbor states are doing, but it was a good first step. We're already getting the first data back. The biggest group that is benefiting from the Promise Scholarship is Black Georgia families. Those families are the ones who have been, you use the word redlined, who have been more likely to be in a school that has low academic performance. Those parents who care about their kids' future, who are going to spend time to make sure their kids have every opportunity, are now getting $7,500 a year from the state to put their kid in a private school. Many of them are choosing Christian schools, interestingly enough. We're seeing that really pop. And let me tell you something. It has a huge partisan implication, because once those families get that benefit that only Republicans support, many of them are open to voting for Republicans. Many black voters in Florida voted for Ron DeSantis because they did not want their parent choice benefits taken away, and the Democrats were against it. That's my answer.
All right. Well, you got two people raising their hands
Uh-oh.
quickly, frantically.
You got-
Stand up quickly. We're wrapping
the
here, but
sisters
quickly
ask
stand
questions.
up.
Here we go.
After 28 years public school, I just went to this year I'm at a private school. I will not name the private school. My daughter taught at a charter school. For everyone who thinks their kids are getting a better education because you're paying money for a private school, or because you're going to a charter school that are not held to the same standards as public schools, I got something to tell you, okay? Because I will tell you what, you can take some, I'm not gonna say all, some private schools, you can take private school kids, and I know this because I'm doing it right now, up against a low-performing public school. And I guarantee you, you will not see a big difference. and academic achievement. So this idea that everyone seems to have, that somehow there's some magic sauce, something magical happening in private schools. I'm at one now, and again, I'm not putting the school where I am down. I'm just saying I was very surprised to see that the academic rigor is just not what everyone thinks it is. And my daughter, who followed me in my footsteps, and I hate that she did, but she's a teacher too, was at a charter school, and she said, "Mom, you will not believe what happens here." So people need to stop. And I really wish you all would actually spend some time getting to know the private schools that you're sending your kids to and the charter schools, and stop fooling yourselves into believing just because you're paying, you're writing a check, that they're somehow getting a better education. There is a lack of critical thinking happening in some of the schools. Parents are demanding grades in private schools that you don't have in public schools. And again, the testing standards are not the same. So when people say failing public schools, I guarantee you a lot of these private schools, if they had to test the same way that public schools did, you would be surprised and you would get asked for a refund from some of these private schools that you're sending your kids to. Because I'm just tired of sitting back listening to people come at us, public school teachers, and coming at our kids who have so much more to deal with, and then everyone else can say, well, I'm sending my kid to a private school. Okay, you keep doing that, but as an educator of 28 years who is now at a private school, and my friend here can tell you, this is my first and last year at a private school because the academic standards are just not up to par.
Well,
Thank you.
on that note, as we wrap here, how are you all feeling about the state of politics, national politics? Or are you feeling good about it? Raise your hand. How are you feeling about the state of Georgia politics? Brian and Tharon didn't make you feel any better?
I think we're getting there. Because usually when you ask that question, Lisa, and Brian has tested this, more hands go up when you ask about state than national.
Yeah,
so.
that's that. All right. Well, as I say on the broadcast, the conversation continues next week on Political Breakfast. We are so honored to have had you here today, and thank you for just enjoying this slice of life with us. So thank you for being here.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.